we had an after-school meeting with the teachers, and there were a couple doctors that were there just giving us the overview of COVID stuff. And I just think, and I tell my students this all the time, I really think it's important that we, as adults and, citizens of, everyone's a human being, we have the job to arm ourselves with, facts and knowledge and really understand what's going on, especially in times like this when I truly believe we live in the age of misinformation. Social media does not help, and so I teach children every day how to understand what evidence is and facts, and those kinds of things is what's most important, and then you make informed decisions for yourself. So again, this is a fact-based, scientific overview, and I'm sure most of you have already made up your mind one way or another, but if you, I'm glad you're staying to learn the facts, and then you can also spread this out to people who might have questions or who might have concerns and confusion about what's going on. And this is going out to all the people that are going to watch it later, hopefully, online. So just to start, just a brief background, I'm going to fly through a lot of this stuff because it's stuff you guys have been inundated with so much over the past year, but just to kind of move through very quickly. This was identified, the virus was identified in 2019. This virus causes severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is SARS, that's where that name comes from, similar to SARS-CoV-1, which many of you will remember was the 2002-2003 outbreak that happened years ago. And that's where SARS-CoV-2 gets its name. And the name is gotten from, so now we're going to have to play with this PowerPoint to make sure that I can get it so you guys can see and it's not wonky. There we go. So COVID-19, which I actually didn't even know this, COVID-19 is for 2019. That's why it has a 19 after it, because it was in 2019. And coronavirus is named for those little spike proteins, which we'll talk about, around the virus. It looks like a crown. Corona meaning crown. So that's why you get coronavirus or COVID. So transmission is just primarily person-to-person respiratory. Coughing, sneezing, talking, 1 to 2 meters, right, 3 to 6 feet. That's where we get the masks. Recent data suggests that you can transmit even when asymptomatic. We all know this stuff now. At this point, we're so tired of hearing it. But here's something that's very important, and this is why the masks are important, and this is why the masks help us, is that luckily it does not, the data right now again, I am a science teacher, I'm not a doctor, I am not in labs studying this, but this is what we come to understand are the facts of it. Right now, and through many tests, they do not believe it supports long-range aerosol transmission, like a TB or a measles. That's why 6 feet is about that recommendation. If you don't have a mask or you're in your house and you're about 6 feet apart, it's because the particles do not hang in the air. That's what that means. Is aerosol transmission means TB or measles was so contagious because it would hang in the air. COVID particles fall, and then they just settle down on an area. And then they, a day or two maybe, just disinfect and we'll take care of that. And then the symptoms are long and many, right? That's why this one's so tough, is because it can present itself many different ways. It looks like the flu for some people, it looks like a common cold for other people, it can be severe pneumonia for some people. That's what makes this so complicated, because it is a very advanced type of virus that will give you all of these slew of things that can make you sick. So that's where it's difficult when typically they say if you have 1, 2 or so of those symptoms, you should go see a healthcare professional. And that's what we've told parents with the kids. If the kids are presenting 2 or more, take them to the doctor, because it's probably an indication of some type of viral thing. So prevention, right? Avoid touching your eyes, your nose, your mouth. Stay home if you're sick. Cover your mouth and nose when sneezing. Wash hands frequently. I always make the joke, it's funny that years ago when I was at a concert last night and the guy behind me wouldn't stop sneezing and coughing. It was just all over my back, and for us it was just kind of whatever it was then. You're like, that's fine. It's amazing what a year of this kind of thing can do for us. We're like, wow, why would anybody ever go anywhere if you're feeling sick? So that kind of stuff, wear a mask, practice distancing, and then the new vaccines, which we'll talk about. The treatment, again, primarily supportive in caring for symptoms. What makes a virus different than bacteria is you can't really cure the virus with medication. There's antiviral, antibody drugs that do are administered in extreme cases, but most of the time it's just symptom management. That's why you take Advil or Tylenol, it's management. That's why all those, you watch those commercials on TV for NyQuil, DayQuil, and they don't cure the virus, it's your body that needs to cure it. That's what's going on. Your body has to learn how to defend itself. The medication is for symptom relief, right? So it's sneezing, coughing, running, aching, all those things. So that's what makes viruses a little different, whereas an antibiotic actually kills the bacteria inside of you. So here, let's get into the science of how the vaccine works. Let's go back to, this is 5th grade for me. Now, I teach my 5th graders this stuff, so I think everyone here should be able to grasp onto this concept. So inside of us, there are millions and millions and millions of little teeny tiny living things called cells. All right, and there you have liver cells and brain cells and lung cells, and they present themselves all different ways, but they all have similar components. So just a brief overview, and does this look familiar to anyone? Does anybody remember studying any of this stuff? Okay, kind of. All right, yeah, we kind of remember it. So the cell, I'm going to use the word called organelles, which is organelles are all the teeny tiny little organs inside of the cell. So the cell is made up of many different things. And so the cytoplasm is the cell liquid. This is where all the organelles float in the cytoplasm. So all those organelles, all those scary, super scary, sciencey looking things up there, they're all floating in that liquid. And how I always get my kids to remember it is, imagine you're at a pool party, and all of the pool toys floating in the pool are the organelles, and the pool water is the cytoplasm. That's what it would be. So that's what they're all floating in. So the nucleus, you guys have heard of that, it's the brain of the cell, commonly referred to as the brain. Controls growth in DNA, messenger RNA, which we'll talk about. I don't want anybody to tune out yet, because I know I call them super scary science words, and I know that some people get really nervous when you see science stuff. It's not too complicated, I promise. And then the nucleus holds the DNA, and the DNA is just what makes you you. Why are you tall? Why do you have blonde hair? Why do you have blue eyes? Why do you have green eyes? Etc. That's what your DNA is. And everybody has different DNA. Okay? So the nucleus is in charge. It's kind of that big brain of the cell, holds the DNA. Then the RNA is kind of like the step down from DNA. RNA is basically just half of everything. It's a single strand, but basically, not to get too complicated, the RNA just produces proteins. And that's what the RNA does. And the proteins are an incredibly important molecule in your cell that helps you do a lot of things, functioning. That's why protein and stuff is so important to continue to give your body proteins. And the ribosomes make those proteins. So the RNA contains the instructions to make them, and it gives it to the ribosomes, which hang out outside of the nucleus, which is important to know. And those ribosomes then make the protein. So RNA and DNA in the nucleus until the RNA is moved out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm. And then the ribosomes the RNA goes into those ribosomes, which I'll show you in a little bit. So the question is, what does a virus do? Which a lot of people kind of have a little bit of misconceptions, a little bit of confusion about what the virus actually does. And so a virus is a strand of RNA or DNA encased in just this layer of protein. All right, and it can infect and replicate in a host cell. So that's all it is. It's just pretty much just a strand of, they always say it kind of looks like spaghetti inside. It's just kind of this casing of DNA or RNA inside and surrounded by a protein, which leads a lot of scientists to ask the question, are viruses living or are they not? And that's, I always say it's hotly debated, which, a lot of people have funny images of scientists arguing each other in a lab or something like that. But truthfully, most scientists agree viruses are not technically living because they really don't follow those qualities of living things. Like all living things need to reproduce or respond to changes in their environment, are made up of cells, all these things that we fall under. But a virus, the only real kind of living thing it can simulate is replication, which means it can make copies of itself very quickly. But it requires a host to do that. So it needs to be inside of a living organism in order to do that. A virus cannot exist or replicate itself outside. That's why a virus will just die if it's on a tabletop or something of that nature. So a virus can replicate, again, but it needs to rely. Essentially, I always say they're more related to androids than they are to organisms. They're more like robotic than they are anything else. So a virus can be active or latent when it enters a cell. So just audience participation using context clues, what would latent mean? Like it just is there, or it's not activated yet, right? It's not turned on inside of the cell. But it can exist in a person's body for days or even years, and some viruses can be in people's bodies for years. That's not to scare you, I'm just saying that can happen in some cases. But it takes over a cell by replicating, or otherwise known as making copies of itself, of its own DNA inside of the cell. So don't worry, I'm not going to read through this diagram. I know it's hard to read it anyway, but essentially what it's saying is the virus either enters into the cell and becomes latent, which means it doesn't do anything for a while, or it begins making copies of itself. And then viruses can be tricky though, and this is where some scientists fall on. This is an interesting, and there's a bit of, I hate to say respect, but it's kind of incredible in my opinion, and this is where my science geek comes out, that there is something in this world that is not considered living, yet it still can mutate and adapt to its environment, which is a huge, huge quality in living things. And we all have a need to survive. All organisms have this need to survive. A virus is programmed that way too, and that's what a mutation is, which we'll talk about shortly. But a mutation is when it adjusts or changes inside of the host cell. So it can mutate and change itself in order to try and continue to survive. So what happens when you actually need to start fighting a virus? Okay? So your body's immune system, we've all heard of that, it's the defense against this virus. So many viruses, including COVID-19, have little proteins that stick out from them. You guys have seen that image probably a million times, right? And I know everyone's like, I'm so tired of seeing that. Oh my goodness, it's so scary, it looks like an alien. Okay? But really what I don't think they always tell you is why it looks like that. So what all of those little spikes are just surrounding that viral pathogen are proteins. They're appropriately named spike proteins. So they'll just stick out of the virus, and that's why that's why we get that corona name. Okay, so that's because it looks like all those spikes. So your body produces something called antibodies that identify those spikes on a specific pathogen. Pathogen, just another name for germ or bacteria or virus. And it attaches to it, preventing that particular virus from getting into the cell. So how this works is a virus, it goes up to your cell, and it uses one of those spike proteins to it's a key and a lock basically, and it unlocks a portion of your cell, and it enters into that door. What your antibodies do is your immune system has to identify a virus, and it makes those little proteins to lock into those that you can see on the exterior of that virus, preventing it from using that key to get into your cell. Okay, so your antibodies then signal out to white blood cells to attack the intruder. And the antibodies are produced rapidly to fight off that pathogen. So what happens is, virus, all those little spikes, and it uses those spikes to get into your cell, and that's how it gets in. What your body has to do is identify that those little spikes and that little thing is not supposed to be there. Okay? And then what it does, though, is it gets in. But if your body can identify and produce what the antibodies are called, that attach to those spikes, it does not let it in to your cell. And then your white blood cells swarm and kill it. Okay? So here's the problem. Here's the limitations. Unfortunately, it takes your body a few days to recognize when there is an intruder in the body. Okay, so it actually gives the virus a few hours or days, which is a ton of time for it to replicate many, 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 many times. So I'll just make this quick analogy. This kind of helps my kids visualize this. Basically what it is pretend a scenario that I'm saying, all right, today is Monday in school, and on Wednesday we're going to play a game. And there are 5 teams in this game. They all have a color: red, yellow, orange, blue, and green. Each team is going to run around, but only one team can tag everyone. That's the red team. The red team are the evil villains, and they are going to run around and they tag everyone. Once they tag someone, the green team, orange team, blue team, yellow team, all become part of the red team. Well, you are going to be the white team, and your job is to go in and catch the red team. However, surprise, you're 3 years old. You do not know what the color red is. You have no idea what red is. So now, start the game. Go ahead. Now they're going to run around. Who are they going to tag? They don't know. They don't know who red is. They don't know. They're not aware of what to tag. So, what I'm going to do is on Monday, before we start the game, I'm going to teach you what the color red is. I think they're going to probably win the game on Wednesday if they can identify red first. This is kind of what your body has to do, and this is what a vaccine does. Oh dear, sorry. This is what a vaccine does for your body. Give me just a second, so sorry. Okay? So you enter in that vaccine, and that's the whole point of what a vaccine does. So a vaccine seeks to speed up the process of making antibodies by either giving your body a piece of the weakened virus or dead virus, or injecting with instructions to tell your body how to make specific antibodies before the virus gets in there. And I'll explain that process very quickly. So you're going to hear several vaccines. These two, the University of Oxford AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson, use weakened live viruses. This is actually how the flu vaccine typically works, is they give you a latent virus. It's typically called an adenovirus, which is weakened or a dead virus. And your body identifies that dead virus and then just produces antibodies already in case more of those viral cells come in. The one that we're using now, and the reason, I'm not going to talk too much about the Johnson & Johnson AstraZeneca because the Johnson & Johnson one is still kind of in clinical trials, and they think that one will be available soon. But the Moderna and Pfizer one are really going to be the ones that you'll probably have access to. And they utilize kind of a newer-ish vaccine approach, which is why I just really want to make sure we understand what it does. So it utilizes what's called mRNA, which is messenger RNA. Okay, so the mRNA vaccine, I know, another scary science diagram, I know it's so horrifying, but I promise, I'll just explain it real quick. The vaccine, what it does is it actually, you get injected, it inserts what's called messenger RNA. And do we remember what the RNA hold instructions to make? They make proteins, yay! So the mRNA, they make proteins. Okay, so what it does is it actually injects instructions to make proteins. Do you know what it injects instructions to make proteins for? The spike protein on COVID-19. So what it does is it actually teaches your body the color red. Okay, so it teaches it before the virus gets in there. So what it does is your body makes those antibodies to defend against a virus. That means if, God forbid, you are exposed to COVID-19 and you have the virus, your body identifies it when it comes in, rather than letting it, replicate for 2 days or so. So essentially, it takes out those few days, which can be crucial for some people. And it takes out those few days. Because I had some people ask me, they're like, well, the vaccine just takes out a couple days, you're just getting a couple days. Like, that could be the difference for some people. That's really what it is. It could prevent you from just ever getting sick. Okay, and that's kind of what the whole point of the vaccine is. And it teaches your body to learn what the virus looks like. And now, I'm not going to get into any of that science up there. That's just a nice little picture. You guys can read it up and Google it. I mean, I had to test on this stuff, so I know it, but for the most part, if I remember most of it. But just know that that's just the idea of the ribosome producing the protein. That's all it is. Okay? So again, here's the kicker. Here's one of the big things that we need to make sure we understand. This happens in the cytoplasm, not in the nucleus. And this is important, because what happens when DNA makes mRNA in a process called transcription, it makes that messenger RNA, it sends it out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm. So it's nowhere near the DNA. The DNA never leaves the nucleus. It's only the messenger RNA. That's it. It's only the instructions for proteins. Okay, so that's important for us to understand. Keep that in our brains for just a minute. So I know that I was going to say that here's where I'm going to really, answer some questions, hopefully. And I know some people are like, meeting's almost over. Someone asks a question. Well, let's answer some questions, and I hope I answer most of them. All right, so let's just boil it down. Effective, dangerous, what's going on? So how effective is the vaccine? When I say the vaccine, I'm going to be more referring to Moderna and Pfizer, because those are the two that are really available at the moment. The vaccine is a 95% effectiveness rate, which is wild, honestly. The best flu vaccine, at its best, is about 60%. Most of the years, the flu vaccine you're getting is maybe 30 to 40% effective. And that's just because the flu has, trillions of strains. And what they do every year is they identify for the flu what strain they think will be the most prevalent, and they make a vaccine based on that. The mRNA, the Moderna and Pfizer are 95% effective, which is it's pretty high up there. So what are the long-term risks? And here's everyone's question. And here's everyone's worry and everyone's question. And here I am to tell you the same thing. We don't know. I'm going to be honest. They don't know. But what they can say is that the process of messenger RNA vaccinations, the whole thing with the mRNA, is that it's a relatively low risk because it's not giving you a virus. It's giving you instructions to make antibodies. That's what it's doing. It's not giving you a virus. So when a lot of people think that Moderna and Pfizer are giving you a virus, they're not. They're giving you instructions on how to defend against the virus. It's instructions to make proteins. It's not giving you a virus. There is no virus inside of you. Okay? So, but the decision is yours to make, because that is definitely something I hear a lot of people say. I just am not sure about the effect, or I'm not sure of the dangers or things like. I'm here to tell you that the dangers are there. We can't say them because we haven't lived it. Unfortunately, none of us have a time machine that can go 10 years down the future and tell us how dangerous it is. But what they can tell you is their prediction is that it doesn't really have that much of a chance to be dangerous. And so, if I get the vaccine, do I still need to mask? Yes, unfortunately, we do need to mask and distance. That's still protocols. If I already had COVID, do I still need to mask? Yep. If I already had COVID, should I get vaccinated? Yep. That's kind of like, these are the things that people, most doctors are going to tell you. That's just kind of in the protocols. When can I stop wearing a mask is a big one, and a lot of the teachers wanted to know because we have to wear them every day. I don't even notice that I'm wearing them at this point. At this point, too, I just feel like it's a testament to human beings' adaptability. We have adapted, at least in my opinion. Personally, I don't wear glasses, though, so I know that's a lot of people's frustration. I don't really even notice a mask. I know they're annoying, and I don't love them. I will say, in the wintertime, I think even from now on, I'm probably just going to wear a mask anyway, because, man, do they keep my face warm. But again, when do I stop wearing a mask? Experts aren't entirely sure, but again, the more protocols we can follow, the quicker this goes away. So again, future complications. Can the vaccine change my DNA? That's a big one. Oh, I've heard it can change your DNA. Oh, I hear they're injecting you with trackers. Oh, I hear, and that's, these are some of the conspiracy theories that really, as a science person, just, hurts me a little bit. But, can the vaccine change my DNA? Well, class, if we remember, where is the DNA stored? In the nucleus. Where is the protein made? In the cytoplasm. Yay, we did it! So guess what? Big old no, it can't. It's not anywhere near your DNA. The DNA is inside the nucleus. Those mRNA, they can't get in there. Okay, they don't have their own lock and key. They're also it just won't happen. They can't do it. Okay, so DNA stays in the nucleus. The vaccine uses RNA, which synthesizes proteins in the cytoplasm, and the RNA does not go back into the nucleus. Okay, it just sends those proteins out, and bada bing, they go and attack those viral proteins. Now, vaccine affect fertility. That's a big one because a lot of the studies that were done, they couldn't really do much on pregnant or soon-to-be pregnant women. But here's what we can tell you. Unfortunately, there was a research paper published back in, 2020, around December 2020, November 2020. There was a study that there was someone that incorrectly linked infertility in the vaccine. So it was an incorrect thing. It was a mistake. They believe that there was a placental protein, which is the placenta, which is part of a woman, pregnancy-wise. The placental protein they said they had the same spike as COVID. So they said if you get the vaccine, what your body will do is it will attack the placental protein. It's not true. It's just incorrect. Unfortunately, that got a lot of wind and got on social media and got in different markets, and a lot of people got a hold of that and said, look. But unfortunately, that was a mistake. Scientists make mistakes too. They're human beings. But what we can do is attempt to correct that, and that's really, because that's a big thing that a lot of people are worried about. Now, long-term risks, again, we're not sure, but what we can tell you is that was an incorrect statement. It is not the same protein. The COVID-19 has its own different spike protein, and if you get it, they really can't find any link right now that says you should be worried. Okay, so what happens? How many vaccines do I get? Well, for Moderna and Pfizer, there are 2 separate doses. Okay, you wait approximately a month between the two. Pfizer's 21 days, Moderna's 28. Why do we get 2? That was a lot of people asking why you get 2. Well, the first one, the round dose is 50 to 70% effective, and round 2 is about 90 to 95% effective. Now, don't ask me what just happened in Pennsylvania, where, whoops, we gave a bunch of people the second dose. Well, I can't control that, I'm sorry. But yes, the idea is you get 1, then wait 21 to 28 days, and you get your second one. Because the second one's really almost like a booster. That's the whole point of that second one. Will the vaccine make me sick? Probably the second one. That's what they found. A lot of people are feeling pretty ill after that second one. But it's actually not a terrible thing, because what's your body making, and why are you sick? It's making those antibodies. So a lot of people say, worst comes to worst, it's actually not terrible that you get a little under the weather after your second, because it means your body is making those antibodies. That's what your body is doing. It is making those antibodies for you to help defend against that virus. A lot of the time your arm is going to be really sore too. The arm, whichever one you get it. I've never understood, they're like, make it the dominant, make it not the dominant. You know, it just depends. I mean, that's typically preference. So what happens part 2? What's the difference between Pfizer and Moderna? Just the difference in storage. Pfizer's kept at negative 70 degrees and Moderna's at 20 degrees, which is actually a huge difference because it's easier to transport the Moderna one because it's, you don't have to keep it at that ridiculously cold temperature. But there's really mild differences between the two. If you Google Moderna versus Pfizer, I can even, if you want to email me or you want to ask me, I think I went skiing yesterday. I might have given them my little chart I was going to copy with my ski passes, so I apologize. I think some of the Hidden Valley is very intelligent about Moderna and Pfizer, because I had a sheet that I had printed out, and now I don't have it anymore, so I apologize. But it just lists the differences. They're very similar to one another. Just a couple percentages of efficacy versus, sorry if I said efficacy is just effectiveness of the vaccine. But efficacy, side effects, different things like that. There's a lot of deeper stuff you can get into, but a lot of the time, it's not up to you, okay? So that's kind of what it is at this point. Most doctors are just saying, depending on your healthcare provider or your place of business or your pharmacy, depending on whatever they get, that's what it's going to be is what you get. So how long does the vaccine or antibodies last? Again, it's brand new. We're all kind of flying blind here, but they're going to guess, based on previous things, probably about 6 months, 90 days to 6 months, but there's also some science that stands to reason that, once you get certain vaccines, your body will continue to produce those antibodies at a very, very, very low level, but you'll always pretty much be vaccinated against that strain at least. What do we know about the new strains, which is really a lot of people's concerns, which you hear about that? I'm here to tell you that, again, we're learning. It's daily, it changes daily. There are some of the smartest people in the world who do nothing but do this stuff every day. We know little as they're new, but new strains are caused by what's called point mutations, which basically just means there's a teeny little part in that DNA code that just swaps or changes, and that can change the whole virus. The benefits, and I know I said benefits of mutations, I know it sounds scary, but it's actually allowing scientists to identify where these mutations are happening and potentially be able to make better and reverse engineer those vaccines for it. So some variants, they think that some of the variants, the one in South Africa, UK area, they're a little bit more transmissible, which means they're a little bit more contagious. But they found mostly the severity of them is about the same. Okay, so they found that it's not like when you hear these headlines like, watch out for new strains, super virus, blah, blah, blah. It's really just a natural thing of a virus to mutate itself, and it's just making different strains. So again, they don't really think, they still say that the vaccine you get, which is against that initial strain, is most likely going to be, pretty effective against the new strains as well. Was the vaccine rushed is a very good question. No, it followed all the FDA protocols. You just happened to have a little thing called a global pandemic, which meant that every single scientist that was capable of working on this was working on it. Every single doctor, every single pharmaceutical company, everyone that was able to do it was doing it, and that's why it moved through so quickly. Sure, you didn't get met with as many because government is government, and a lot of the time they like to, based on whatever, okay, they say yes, they say no. most people tend to agree we need to get a vaccine or some type of cure for this, let's get it moving. So, but it passed all the same FDA regulations, passed all the same clinical trials. The FDA, which I get to teach my 7th graders about, is a very tough process. It is very difficult. It's kind of like those of you that have ever, I don't know if any of you have ever written anything or published anything or worked in this capacity, but peer reviewing journals and things like that, holy cow, is that hard to get it passed, get anything validated. Because what you do is you say, okay, I have this item, I'm going to put it up to the most intense scrutiny on the planet, because it's harder than passing something by a bunch of 12-year-olds, that's for sure, though they can be pretty scrutinous too. But I digress. You take that and you place it in front of a board of 50, 100, whatever, certified people who are so intelligent on this stuff, and they will just try and knock it down, and if you get it passed, it passes through. So no, the vaccine was not rushed. When can I get my vaccine? Excellent question. This varies right now, depending on the category. Many people are frustrated, especially Pennsylvanians. We are very frustrated because we see other states that seem to kind of roll this out. Don't blame me, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it, I'm going to be honest. However, Dr. Fauci had said the timeline for the vaccines will probably be prolonged, obviously, maybe into mid to late May, okay, in early June. But that's regarding vaccines for general public. Their plan, and national, now we all have our states doing their own thing, but the national idea is that they're hoping that by May or June, everyone will be able to get it. That will be out of those groupings of groups, and that just by May or June, they said it's just kind of open season for vaccines. And hoping that everyone is vaccinated by July or so. Now that's a fluid situation, it's going to move a lot based on, but they did finalize the deals, purchase 200 million more. The hope is all Americans could have it by July. Again, fluid situation. I know everyone's frustrated. Don't come to me asking when you're going to get yours. My job is just to tell you the science behind it and just explain it to you. Okay, so again, and this is just my lasting thing for you all. This decision is yours to make. Okay, at the end of the day, getting the vaccine is a personal choice. That's up to you. Okay, what you do have is a responsibility to understand the facts and then make the best decision. So it's your job to understand that really little science that actually goes behind. I mean, yes, if you really want to dive into the rabbit hole of what's actually happening, go for it. I gave you a 12-year-old understanding of it. And I think that's all most people need to really grasp onto those concepts. Again, I think a lot of understanding goes a long way too, of saying, you know what, we don't know. And that's kind of the hardest part about all of this, is we aren't sure. But what we can tell you is that they are learning new things every day, and that's the beauty of science, is that you are learning new things and you're allowed to adapt and change. If we weren't allowed to adapt and change in science, we would still believe that all of the planets revolved around the Earth. And so it's kind of just, we are able to adapt and change. God, and my own little thing, and I thankfully do teach this part of, I get to teach at a Christian school, which is really nice, where we can throw God in there and say God, and it's a Catholic school, so we talk about what the Pope says, and the Pope says that God gave his creation the ability to adapt and change. God instilled that upon him, because if we imagine God as just this guy who just, boom, made creation and said, I'm done, see you later, that completely removes who and what God is. To us as Christians, we believe that God has instilled us to change and grow and mature and learn and love and all of those complex things that we do. And I think that's very important for us to continue to remember and understand. So again, choice is yours. My job is just to give you facts. And then I just had to throw a picture of a puppy on here, just because I know everybody needs to see it. I do appreciate you listening, because I will throw a little statistic out here. It is 100% easier to not do something than it always is to do something. So it's 100% easier not to show up to something. So I appreciate you for showing up. I know that the average attention span on PowerPoint is about 10 minutes, so I appreciate you guys sticking with me. So if you have any questions, I'm going to dismiss the group at large. If you have any questions, you can just come up and talk to me later. But I appreciate it. Thank you.